Hello everyone, I'm very glad that you listened to my story. Please give me a follow and like the video if you enjoyed it. Feel free to comment and provide feedback so I can improve the sound quality. Yes, we invite you to listen to part 9 of the series. Chapter 17, Unexpected Encounter. Fortunately, Han Sen's feet were also wrapped in armor, and the scorpion tail couldn't hurt him at all. Han Sen stepped on the quartz scorpion and crushed it. Primitive creature quartz scorpion killed. No beast soul gain. Eat the flesh of quartz scorpion to gain 0 to 10 primitive geno points. Han Sen picked up the dead scorpion, put it into a prepared bag, and walked further into the cave with the bag on his back. Protected by the black beetle armor, Han Sen killed all quartz scorpions he saw on the way, and there were nearly 100 scorpions in his bag after he had walked for an hour. Georgie Porgy, Pudding, and Pie kissed the girls and made them cry. When the boys came out to play, Georgie Porgy ran away. Han Sen collected the dead scorpions as he was humming a nursery rhyme. His mother had to work to support their family, and he was the one who took care of Han Yan. That's why he was used to humming nursery rhymes. $. Han Sen heard the other name he had given himself when he was on a spree. Shocked, he peered in the direction where the voice came from. In the cave sat a woman in her 20s leaning against stalagmites, looking at him surprised. "Qin Xian!" Han Sen exclaimed. Not expecting to see this woman here, Han Sen turned around to run. Since he had stabbed her in the rear, he had had nightmares about it. "Don't go. I don't care about the grudge between you and Son of Heaven. And even if I wanted to look for trouble, I wouldn't be able to," Qin Xian quickly said. Han Sen paused and looked back at Qin Xian, whose ankle was swollen and badly bruised. Clearly, she had been stung by a quartz scorpion. It suddenly hit Han Sen that Qin Xian must have so many treasures on her since she had been in steel armor shelter for years and wished to evolve with the maximum sacred geno points. She must have sacred blood beast souls and very many mutant beast souls. At this point she was injured, and it looked quite serious. She had so many geno points that the scorpion poison might not kill her, but her ability to fight surely had suffered, or at least she couldn't move her injured leg. Although I was the one who stabbed her, she hit me back right away and has been ruthless to me ever since. If I could blackmail her right now, that would be some compensation for my suffering these months, Han Sen thought, leering at Qin Xian. As if she could see through him, Qin Xian summoned a beast soul in the shape of a purple butterfly, which turned into a purple dagger in her hand. "You know the name of this dagger?" Qin Xian asked him with a smile. "I don't." Han Sen noticed the gleam of the dagger, but she couldn't have summoned it for its beauty. It must be at least a mutant beast soul and even possibly a sacred blood beast soul. This dagger is the beast soul of a malicious butterfly, and it is envenomed with strong poison. You decide if your armor could block my dagger. Qin Xian was still smiling. Qin Xian couldn't see Han Sen blushing because his armor blocked his face. "You worry too much. We just met and have no hard feelings between us whatsoever. Why would I try to hurt you? The sacred blood armor might not have been able to block the sacred blood dagger. Han Sen would not take the chance. Besides, they weren't really enemies either, as Qin Xian didn't do anything more than make a few threats. It was Son of Heaven and his gang that really bullied him. Qin Xian smiled and took back her dagger. "I can't move. If you can take me out of the cave safely, I will pay you a generous reward." "How come you came here alone?" Han Sen asked, not agreeing straight away. He was curious how Qin Xian was able to come this far when there was no trace of quartz scorpions being hunted on the way. "Originally I wanted to kill a mutant quartz scorpion, but it was more cunning than I thought. It started to attack me, leading other scorpions when my incense was about to burn out, so that I couldn't leave the cave. The primitive scorpions no longer feared me when the incense was gone. I was able to fight them off but was stung by a mutant quartz scorpion. So now it's even less likely that I can leave here. Qin Xian looked at Han Sen and said, "Didn't you barter with Su Xiaoqiao for money? Take me out and I'll offer you that. You were stung by a mutant quartz scorpion." Han Sen looked at her, horrified. "If it was just a sting by a primitive quartz scorpion, I wouldn't have asked for help," Qin Xian said casually. Han Sen now knew it was incense that kept the quartz scorpion's sway from Qin Xian, and she thought that he must have used the same method. What she didn't know was that he had killed all quartz scorpions on the way out. If she had known, she would have walked away herself. "Did you not kill the mutant scorpion?" Han Sen asked again. "Yes, but I did not get a beast's soul. No one could get the flesh either, as it's full of scorpions out there," Qin Xian said. "I'll take you, not for money but for a mutant beast's soul. You are too greedy." Qin Xian glanced at him. "Miss Qin, for you, a mutant beast's soul is nothing. Is your life not worth it?" Han Sen said. "All right then." Qin Xian looked at Han Sen earnestly. "Amazing. You have a deal, miss." Han Sen walked farther into the cave. Chapter 18, Mutant Creature. "What are you doing?" Qin Xian frowned. "I'll take you out after picking up the corpse of the mutant quartz scorpion you killed." Han Sen continued to go inside. "There are so many scorpions there. Don't you need incense?" Qin Xian looked at Han Sen, puzzled. "Why do men need incense?" Han Sen came back with a giant blue scorpion about a foot long in his hand. Qin Xian sighed after looking him up and down. "I was tricked by you. You have already killed all the quartz scorpions out there, haven't you? Smart girl." Han Sen poured the dead scorpions from his bag, which soon piled into a heap. Although Qin Xian had guessed it, she was still surprised to see that Han Sen had killed so many scorpions. Han Sen put the corpse of the mutant scorpion in his bag first before he started to fill it with primitive scorpions. There were still a few that wouldn't fit in there, and he didn't waste those but ate all the flesh until he had cleaned them up. Primitive quartz scorpion flesh eaten. 4 primitive geno points gained. "I haven't seen anyone quite like you, willing to eat such disgusting things." Qin Xian had never met someone who had such nice equipment but remained so stingy. "Come on." Han Sen squatted next to Qin Xian, wanting to carry her out on his back. "Since there are no scorpions anymore, I could just walk out," Qin Xian said. "You have promised me a mutant beast's soul and couldn't take that back anyway. Why not enjoy my service with your injured leg?" Han Sen said. "You are right. Why not?" She bit her bottom lip, got up and carefully climbed onto the back of Han Sr. With the armor, Han Sen couldn't really enjoy the feeling of her body against his. He walked out, carrying Qin Xian, with his bag in one hand. She only weighed about 100 pounds, which was nothing for Han Sen, who had already gained quite a lot geno points. They emerged from the cave in no time. "Where are you going?" asked Han Sr. "Back to the shelter. Qin Xian said. Han Sen no longer spoke and carried her towards steel armor shelter. After an hour, he let her down. "It is not too far away from the shelter now, and people pass by here all the time. Wait for a while, and then ask them to bring you back." Han Sen extended an empty hand to Qin Xian. "Now, my mutant beast soul. I have asked Su Xiaoqiao to send a message. Would you sell me the sacred blood beast soul and gear?" Qin Xian didn't hesitate before she handed over a mutant beast soul in the shape of a black cat to Han Sr. "What is your offer for the golden double-edged axe?" Han Sen asked. 2 million. That is a piece of sacred blood gear, while 2 million won't even get you a mutant beast soul. Han Sen frowned. "Sacred blood gear is very nice, but you can't take it to the real world, while beast souls could be used outside God's sanctuary. That explains the price. If you would sell a sacred blood beast soul, I'd give you 20 million, explained Qin Xian. A mutant beast soul, plus 2 million, Han Sen said. A mutant beast soul is out of the question. I'll give you 5 million. Flesh of 2 mutant creatures and 2 million. You are asking too much. Final offer, 6 million. After all, you can't take it outside, Qin Xian said. Okay, get the money ready. I will tell Xiao Jiao when and where we trade, Han Sen said and left with his bag. You really would not consider selling the sacred blood beast soul? 20 million is just a tentative offer. We could discuss further, Qin Xian said to his back. No way. Han Sen left without pausing. Qin Xian looked at him leaving and thought, his armor was tougher than the quartz scorpion sting. It must also be a sacred blood beast soul. Who was he? He doesn't look like a soldier. She had no clue. Han Sen went back to his original look and returned to the shelter with his bag. There was no one guarding the gate anymore. They had searched for dollar for so long and found nothing, so they had to give up. Coincidentally, Han Sen ran into Han Hao and his friends again. Nice to see you again, ass freak. You have a full bag with you. How many mutant creatures did you hunt? A young man ridiculed him. 1. Han Sen replied calmly. Haha, you are funny. Could you even hunt primitive creatures? It must be full of black beetles there, laughed the young man, leading everyone to burst into laughter. No one believed Han Sen could get a mutant creature. Han Hao, don't mistake him for anyone. If you knew him, you'd forever have bad luck. A young man patted Han Hao on the shoulder. No way I'd know, ass freak. Han Hao looked embarrassed. Han Sen ignored them and carried his bag back to his room. He saved the mutant quartz scorpion and was going to sell Xiao Jiao all the rest. Although he could evolve a creature into a mutant one in half a month with the black crystal, he'd rather use the crystal to get sacred blood creatures. Chapter 19, The Distinguished and Aristocrats Only. In the middle of the night, Han Sen placed a bag of dead quartz scorpions and a note at the door of Suzio Qiao's room before knocking a few times. Then he hid in an alley close by and made sure Xiao Jiao took the bag and note inside. It turned out to be a nice collaboration, and Han Sen got the 6 million promised by Qin Xian and another 80,000 for the scorpions. He went back to his room with boxes of cash and almost jumped with joy. Even when his father was still alive, he had never seen so much money at once. Han Sen left God's sanctuary with the money, since the only thing he wanted to do right now was to share the joy with his mother and sister. Their adversity had finally ended. The 2 million he earned before was all used on solving the issue of the old house, and he could eventually have the 6 million to himself, which was a totally different feeling. Although the money was not even enough for the rich to buy a luxury airplane, for Han Sen it was already the most money he had seen in his life. Mom, Yan, I have something to show you. Han Sen pulled them into his room and poured the cash onto his bed. Where did you get so much money? Luo Sulan was first frightened instead of being surprised, fearing that her son might have done something dangerous. Mom, I was lucky to have killed a mutant creature and gained the beast's soul, so I traded it for this money. Han Sen did not dare to tell the truth, afraid that Luo Sulan might get worried. He didn't dare to leak anything about the black crystal, as the precious stone may land its innocent possessor in jail. His whole family could be wiped out if word got out. Luo Sulan said ruefully, Sen, you should not have sold it. It could be of great help to you, and we could always get by. Mom, no worries. I will have another chance. I've eaten the mutant flesh and gained mutant geno points. In the future, it'll be much easier for me to hunt, and everything will get better. But Luo Sulan still felt bad, as it was not that easy to kill a mutant creature. For ordinary people, it would be great luck to hunt one, just like winning the lottery, so there may never be a second time. Yan is about to start school, and I'm not letting her to go to a public one like I did, Han Sen said. Luo Sulan looked at her children with tears in her eyes. It's all my fault. I didn't take good care of you. Mom, you are a great woman, and you were the one who raised us. Let me contribute a little as well. Han Sen picked up Han Yan. Yan, let's go out to eat. You can have whatever you want today. Han Yan's face lit up. I want to eat sapphire ice cream. Sure, let's go have sapphire ice cream. Han Sen pinched Han Yan's small nose. Sapphire ice cream is too expensive. You don't need to splurge with the money. Save it to buy some meat. Just once. Han Sen went out, holding Luo Sulan's hand. Don't tell others you have hunted a mutant creature or you sold a mutant beast's soul. I don't want anything bad to happen to you. Luo Sulan urged her son. Since Han Sen's father had the accident, Luo Sulan had changed. She no longer wanted Han Sen to be in charge but just to be safe. Mom, relax. I will not say a thing. You keep the money and decide what to do with it. Han Sen went out of the house holding his sister with one hand and his mother with the other. Sapphire ice cream was famous throughout the alliance and was also very expensive. Even the cheapest type cost more than 10,000. Their neighbors' kids were always having sapphire ice cream. And Han Sen also had tried it a few times when he was younger. However, when Han Yan was born, they were already bankrupt, so they couldn't afford such luxuries anymore. Having the impression that the ice cream was delicious, Han Sen could no longer remember what it tasted like. When the three came to Sapphire, all the seats were taken, and there was a long line to buy ice cream. Let's go upstairs. Before Han Sen entered the store, he saw through the window that the second floor was almost empty, so he thought the ladies could go upstairs and have a seat while he would stand in line alone. At the stairs, he was stopped by a waiter. I am sorry, you cannot go up, the waiter said. Why? Aren't there any seats upstairs? Han Sen frowned. Contemptuous and impatient, the waiter pointed to a notice on the wall. You should have heard about our rule even if you have never had our ice cream before. Han Sen looked at the notice, which said, the distinguished and aristocrats only, and understood what he was referring to. So the second floor was an area exclusively for people with privileges, and ordinary people weren't even allowed to enter. No wonder the second floor had much better decorations yet was so empty. We don't need to sit down. We'll just wait here, and you go get Yan ice cream, said Luo Sulan, trying to spare Han Sr. I'm going. Han Sen smiled and went to the back of the line. He seemed to be indifferent, but was suddenly possessed by an aspiration. What's so special about the distinguished and aristocrats? Soon I shall have it all and more. The stupid notice will never get in my way again. There still were no empty seats when it was his turn to buy the ice cream, so Han Sen had to order takeout. Before leaving, he took another look at the notice, the distinguished and aristocrats only. Chapter 20, Her. The next morning, Han Sen was on the train going to the teleport station, with many passengers sharing his destination. Most people could not afford a teleport device, so they had to enter God's sanctuary using a public teleport station. Today, the conductor seemed to be in a bad mood. While Han Sen was deep in thought about what to do in God's sanctuary, a violent shake of the train left everyone who was standing falling to the sides. Since he wasn't paying attention, Han Sen also involuntarily staggered a few steps forward and fell on something soft. Subconsciously wanting to seize something to regain his balance, he felt strange because what he was holding onto was even more soft and tender. Then he found that he had bumped into a woman in military uniform, and his hands were on her chest. Bastard! The woman scowled and elbowed him fast and hard. If she were to succeed, Han Sen would have lost half his face. He subconsciously raised an arm to block the hit, felt a strong hit on his arm and involuntarily stepped back several steps. The woman turned around and viciously stared at Han Senator. She exclaimed with just one look, "You ass! Qin Xian!" She didn't finish her sentence, but Han Sen cried in fear. This woman in uniform happened to be the woman from whom he had gotten the nickname Ass Freak. Han Sen did not expect Qin Xian also to be on Roka planet, and it seemed that she had enlisted in the army. Being in the military was nothing uncommon in the Alliance, as all legitimate residents of the Alliance needed to serve at least 5 years when they turned 20. When Han Sen turned 20, he would also become a soldier, if there were no special reason for him not to serve. Qin Xian recognized Han Sen, but didn't initiate a fight. She just looked at him with a cold and slightly disgusted look. Han Sen thought ruefully, she must think I'm a pervert now. I don't even blame her. I did stab her in the bottom and now. If I were her, I'd assume the same. There are so many planets in the Alliance, how is Qin Xian here as well? And what are the chances that I would meet her and did this to her? Han Sen thought plaintively. There was no way around it, he would have to let the situation play itself out. In the Alliance, wounding others was not allowed. Qin Xian did not want to make a scene, so she just glowered at him and didn't move further. Han Sen had goosebumps from her staring and immediately got off the train once he reached the teleport station. To his surprise, Qin Xian followed behind him. Dogs can't help from eating sh*t. I thought you were just innocent, while you are by nature a disgusting person, Qin Xian said fiercely. You saw what happened. It was the train, and so many others also fell. It was just a coincidence, Han Sen said with a wry smile. Would you believe that if you were me? Qin Xian said coldly. What do you want? Qin Xian had identified him as a bastard, so there was no need to explain. You really are brazen, showing no remorse for what you did. It must not be the first time you have done something like this. Seeing that Han Sen wasn't going to apologize, Qin Xian raged, you think I'll just send you to the police? It's not that easy. I can't beat you up here, but in God's sanctuary, it will be a different story. You are going there, right? I'll wait for you. Qin Xian immediately left and the soldiers saluted her, good morning, station master. Han Sen stumbled and couldn't believe what he saw. He almost wanted to cry. All teleport stations belong to the military system. A garrison was assigned to each station, and the station master was the garrison's chief executive. Han Sen had heard that the old station master was to be transferred, and he couldn't believe that Qin Xian would be the new station master, not even in his wildest dreams. Han Sen had a bad feeling about the whole thing. As the station master, Qin Xian would know his whereabouts very well. And it wasn't even possible for him to use a different teleport station. There are 3 public teleport stations on planet Roka, but the other 2 were too far away, and he couldn't waste 2 days on traveling. Han Sen entered God's sanctuary when Qin Xian went to her office. He decided to wait until she left the shelter before he teleported back home. Han Sen gave Qin Xian no chance to intercept him. Taking some meat jerky made from the mutant scorpion, Han Sen left steel armor shelter. Did I use up my luck when I found the black crystal? Han Sen thought, depressed. He did not go far before seeing Son of Heaven and his gang standing outside the shelter chatting. Han Sen wasn't interested in meeting up with them and went the other way. However, Luo Tianyang called him from behind, "Ass freak, come here." Reluctantly, Han Sen had to turn around toward Luo Tianyang, perplexed. "I'm calling you. Come here and you'll get lucky." Luo Tianyang waved to him, smiling maliciously. "There is no need. I'm not strong. I can only deal with ordinary creatures and can't even fight primitive creatures. I am afraid I cannot help you." Han Sen knew it was never good when Luo Tianyang called him. "Cut the crap. Do you want a beating? I said come." Luo Tianyang gazed at Han Sen with his face dark. Chapter 21, Underground River. In addition to Han Sen, Son of Heaven and his gang were also joined by a few thugs they paid to come along. The group left steel armor shelter and marched into the mountains. Although they expected nothing good to happen, they still wanted to take the chance for the sake of the generous reward. In the past, If Han Sen had not been blocked by Qin Xian and Son of Heaven, he might also have risked his life for the bounty. Now Han Sen had no reason to take such risks, but it was clear that Son of Heaven and Luo Tianyang wanted to use him as a stepping stone, which made him want to kill them both. Han Sen quietly followed them, guessing what they were about to do. When recruiting people, the gang had said they were hunting a mutant creature, and it was only because there were also many ordinary and primitive creatures that they needed more hands. Han Sen of course couldn't take this seriously. To kill a mutant creature, the regular gang was more than enough. The dozen people around Son of Heaven could all kill a mutant creature on their own, let alone Son of Heaven himself. The extra hands were completely unnecessary, according to their story. Luo Tianyang and others casually killed the creatures they encountered along the way, and gave the meat to the hired people casually, which made everyone quite happy. The group had been going for 6 or 7 days, and the gang still had no intention of stopping. On the 8th day, they halted at a mountain pass. Very far from the shelter, there was no human activity. They encountered many different creatures. Son of Heaven and his gang had killed a lot of primitive animals on the way and kept some of the flesh as food. It seems that we are almost there. What on earth are they up to? Han Sen had not heard anything, but judging from the grave look on their faces, this couldn't be a simple operation. They rested for a day at the campsite and crossed the mountain pass the next morning. After hiking a dozen miles, they saw a gap in the canyon so deep and dark that no one could see the bottom. Everyone lit a torch. The gang sent the hired people as the vanguard and followed them into the gap. The hired ones all knew it was time to put their life on the line, so they were dawdling. "Why are you going so slowly, bitches? Do you still want the rest of the money?" Luo Tianyang whipped a few people in the back and shouted. The thugs could only speed up going down. Han Sen was among them. It was not too difficult to walk down, and nothing happened along the way until they reached the bottom. The thugs were relieved and started to talk and laugh again. It was very dark at the bottom of the gap, and the group had to rely on the torches. There was an underground river running through the huge space. Cross the river and go into the cave on the other side. Luo Tianyang pointed his whip to the other side. "Luo, I cannot swim. This river is too wide," said a young man who had been recruited. "Who told you to swim? We have inflatable boats. Just row across." Luo Tianyang opened the parcel on the back of his mount, and there were indeed inflatable boats in there. After they inflated the boats, each one could sit 4 to 5 people. The group started to row the boats across. The speed of the water was not fast, and there was no risk of being rushed downstream. 2 boats soon reached the center of the river. All of a sudden, with a splash, a dark creature emerged from the water with half of its python-like body exposed. Its body was wider than a bucket and covered with shiny black fine scales. Its mouth was so large that it could fit a cow. But it wasn't a cow that was swallowed, rather someone on the boat. The giant body then put its full weight on the boat, which exploded with everyone on it falling into the water. Everyone was shocked and trying to row the boats back. Those who hadn't gone on the boat just dropped their boat and started to run back. With a glint of cold steel, the 2 running the fastest were beheaded by Luo Tianyang and another gang member. Luo Tianyang pointed the knife with blood on it at the rest and cried ruthlessly, "There is but one monster, so whoever reaches the other side can live. And I'll kill anyone who took the money and tries to run away. To live or to die, it is up to you." Everyone was intimidated by Luo Tianyang's vicious act and started to row towards the other side. "Assholes, you just want to feed the monster with humans," Han Sen cursed in his heart. Those who fell into the water before were trying to swim to the other side but were suddenly pulled into the water by something. It was so dark that no one saw what happened to them, but their fate could be imagined from the thick scent of blood. The hired boys dared not move forward, and Luo Tianyang used his knife again to force them. They didn't want to stay in the river, so they had to row hard. Han Sen lit the surroundings with his torch while rowing the boat. In case the monster came out of the water, he had to summon sacred blood beast soul armor at once to save his life. The monster again collapsed a boat, and everyone on it was screaming. Then what could be heard was only the waves rolling. "Row harder if you want to live." Han Sen yelled at the two on the boat with him who were petrified as he was rowing his heart out. #King heartless bastards. He swore quietly. The two men were revived by Han Sen's shout, and started to row desperately. From time to time there were screams and splashes. Countless men must have been buried in the snake belly. Chapter 22, Broken Egg. There was no doubt that this giant snake was a sacred blood creature. Aquatic creatures were hard enough to kill, let alone a sacred blood creature. With his normal gang, Son of Heaven didn't even dare to hunt it, but was only trying to fill out the group, so that they could safely reach the other side. Han Sen took a look at the other side as he was rowing. After they passed the middle of the river, the torch could light up the other side a little bit. Since Han Sen had started to practice jade skin, his body function seemed to get a lot better. Vision was also a lot stronger than before, and he seemed to have gained night vision as well. Now he could clearly see a cave 6 to 9 feet wide on a cliff. Although there was no path, the cave must have been the gang's destination. Han Sen was looking at the cave when he heard a loud splash. His heart sank as he saw the giant snake popping out of water less than 6 feet from their boat, its mouth moving towards the boat and its fangs showing. Without thinking, Han Sen jumped into the water and summoned his armor underwater. Like a fish, he struggled to swim across the river. The whole process of crossing the river was tragic. It wasn't clear whether the black snake was insatiable or just determined to kill humans, but only 2 boats reached the other side, and only 7 people lived. All the others were in the water and most likely dead. The snake didn't show up again. Son of Heaven, although the snake was a sacred blood creature, it was not intelligent. "Now it is full, we should not have too much risk crossing," said Luo Tianyang, smiling. "Go over." Son of Heaven gave the order, and the gang went over in 3 boats. As expected, the snake didn't attack anymore and they all landed safely. Continue. Luo Tianyang whipped the 7 survivors, who were forced to walk inside the cave, trembling. They regretted so much that they had coveted the bounty. What was money good for if they died here? But they did not encounter any other creatures along the way. In half an hour, they reached the end of the cave. At the end of the cave there was a pool, and next to the pool was a gravel nest 30 feet wide. In the middle of the nest there lay 2 eggs the size of ostrich eggs with black patterns. Son of Heaven was overjoyed. "Ha, awesome. Eggs of sacred blood creatures, and there are 2 of them. Now my sacred geno points could go over 80. Even so, he did not lose his caution and winked at Luo Tianyang, who was equally excited. The latter understood immediately and forced the survivors to fetch the eggs. Trembling, they walked into the gravel nest and carried out the 2 eggs. However, before they were able to leave the nest, the pool started to bubble, and bang! A huge snake head stuck out, the dark red snake eyes staring at the egg thieves. "Damn! Throw the eggs over," Son of Heaven shouted to them, but they were dumbfounded by the snake up close and did not reply him. "Useless mother *# curse. Son of Heaven scolded and summoned his red sword, running forward. The gang all summoned their weapons and followed him. Rushing in front of the survivors, Son of Heaven grabbed the eggs and ran towards the mouth of the cave. The snake was originally concerned about its eggs and didn't move. Seeing Son of Heaven running away with them, it went into a rage and left the pool, chasing the gang madly. "Block it," cried Son of Heaven, while he kept running without pause. Luo Tianyang was even more ruthless. He grabbed 2 shivering survivors and threw them at the snake. Catching one in the mouth, the snake swallowed him without chewing. The rest of the gang all followed suit, using the survivors as human shields, which temporarily resisted the snake's attack. They took advantage of it and retreated. Son of Heaven ran fast, holding the 2 snake eggs. It took him no time to arrive at the mouth of the cave. When he was excited, a golden fist appeared in front of him and hit him on the face. He hadn't expected someone hiding behind the cave mouth and was unprepared for the attack. Blood spilling and nose crooked, he fell back with his hand covering his face. The 2 snake eggs suddenly flew out from his arms. A golden figure jumped up, caught 1 egg with each hand, and ran toward the river. $. Son of Heaven fell to the ground, clutching his face. He immediately managed to climb up, saw the unique golden armor and recognized who it was. After jumping in the water, Han Sen had swiftly swum to the shore in the chaos, and instead of going into the cave, he hid behind a boulder and waited until the gang entered the cave. He then followed them and watched. When he saw Son of Heaven running with the eggs, Han Sen gave him a hard punch and captured the eggs. Han Sen just regretted that his bronze crescent spear had been ruined by Xuelonjian, or he might have been able to kill Son of Heaven with this secret attack. Han Sen reached the river and suddenly saw waves roaring. A huge black-scaled snake appeared from the river. #K. There is another one. Han Sen looked back and saw the other snake chasing the gang. You are so #Ked. Son of Heaven hated Dollar's guts and gloated that he was stopped by the snake. Han Sen quickly had an idea as the snake in the river glared at him. He pushed hard with his right hand secretly, and then threw the snake egg at Son of Heaven. Catch. We will each keep 1 egg, and let's deal with the snakes together first. Who agreed to that? I will get both eggs and kill you. Thinking Han Sen was terrified, Son of Heaven sneered and caught the egg, but the egg broke when it hit him and the egg was all over him. Son of Heaven was stunned. Chapter 23, Obsidian Dragon. The giant snake shrieked and rushed madly toward Son of Heaven, who was covered in egg, leaving Han Sen alone. Han Sen turned and ran with the remaining snake egg. Jumping on an inflatable boat, he desperately rowed to the other side without looking back. He still had an egg with him, and if both snakes decided to go for him, it would be no fun at all. $F***K. Han Sen heard cursing from behind, followed by all sorts of human voices and the beast's roar. Han Sen went to the other side, jumped onto the shore and ran out of the big gap. Without a pause, he ran toward the shelter. After running for a while, Han Sen started to get uneasy. In case Son of Heaven and his gang escaped, they would definitely go for him, and he could by no means outrun their mounts. Han Sen decided to go into the forest and take a detour so that he didn't risk being caught by them. They had been in the shelter for years, and everyone was fit and had plenty of beast souls. Even though they were no match for the snakes, surely some of them could get away. It was best to be careful. That night, Han Sen found a corner to take shelter from the wind and got some firewood. Sealing the snake egg with a layer of mud, he put it on the fire and barbecued it. While cooking, Han Sen murmured, "Pure life, before you see this dirty world, let me handle the sin and send you back to heaven." Young obsidian dragon killed. No beast soul gained. Eat it to gain 0 to 10 sacred geno points randomly. Having barbecued it for a while, Han Sen heard the voice. So it was not a snake. Unfortunately I didn't gain the beast soul, Han Sen thought greedily. Soon the egg was cooked and Han Sen used a stick to get the egg out of the fire. Breaking the burnt mud crust on the outside, he saw the delicious egg white. Han Sen took a bite, and the egg was so much better than a chicken egg. Young obsidian dragon eaten. 1 sacred geno point gained. Han Sen ate the whole egg and was so full he couldn't move. He had gained 5 sacred geno points. Adding the 8 points he already had, Han Sen now had 13 sacred geno points. It took Han Sen 8 or 9 days to reach Steel Armor Shelter. Son of Heaven and his gang had been back for 2 days already when he arrived. There were only 8 in the gang that returned alive, and everyone was injured. Even some of Son of Heaven's henchmen had died. Son of Heaven wouldn't say what they had done, and Qin Xian and Fist Guy failed to find out. Several hired thugs, however, had come back alive after they had fallen into the water. And through them, Qin Xian and Fist Guy eventually learned what had happened. They still had no idea what had happened after the hired men fell into the water, so just took for granted that the gang was hurt by the obsidian dragons. Their guess was only half right, because the egg thrown by Han Sen also contributed a lot to the gang's predicament. After all, they wouldn't have had to fight the dragons if he hadn't done that. Son of Heaven was afraid of being ridiculed, and did not tell what happened later, while secretly he launched a new search for $. It is a pity that Son of Heaven and Luo Tianyang didn't die. Han Sen learned what had happened and felt relieved. He was afraid that Son of Heaven might suspect something, seeing he had returned alone. Now that there were other survivors, Han Sen naturally had nothing to worry about, and caught a primitive copper-toothed beast on his way back to the shelter. If Son of Heaven and his gang came to interrogate him, he could just say he was rushed downstream and got lucky. Han Sen was thinking too much, because Son of Heaven did not have the time to ask him and didn't make the connection at all. More than half a month was spent on the expedition. Han Sen teleported out of God's sanctuary to see his mother and sister. However, at the gate of the transport station, Qin Xian was standing at the exit, looking at him coldly. "You sure can hide. It's been more than half a month since I saw you. Do you think I'll spare you from the punishment you deserve? Miss Qin, what do you want?" Han Sen looked at her, depressed. Qin Xian was now the station master, and there was no way to bypass her. "Easy, take this and come with me." Qin Xian threw a combat suit at Han Sr. "You would not kill me anyway," Han Sen thought, taking the combat suit and following her back to the station. They didn't teleport to God's sanctuary but to the combat room in the station. Han Sen put on the combat suit and entered the room, where Qin Xian stood in a red combat suit with black stripes. A combat suit was not just clothing, but a high-tech product that could function as armor, with inbuilt sensors which recorded all data during fighting, including heart rate, breathing, punch speed and the impact taken. This allowed the users to understand their physical status and determine their future practice methods. "If you win, I will leave you alone for good." Qin Xian curled her finger, indicating Han Sen should attack. "You are about to max out on sacred geno points and have so many beast souls. I just graduated, and you have trained in the army for so long. Why don't you just say you want to kill me?" Even if Han Sen could win, he didn't want to expose the fact that he was $. And he wasn't confident about the fight. "No beast soul allowed. And we are clear if you can still stand after 50 movements, Qin Xian said casually. "Deal." Han Sen believed he could endure 50 movements if he focused on defense. Chapter 24, Sneak Attack Skills. Qin Xian had made up her mind to kick Han Sen's ass. The first time, when Han Sen stabbed her in the rear, she could attribute it to his ignorance, while the harassment on the train couldn't be a coincidence. Having identified Han Sen as a freak and bastard, Qin Xian walked up to him with anger in her eyes and said, "You start." Han Sen punched her in the face. Clutching her nose and stepping back, Qin Xian stared at him, not believing what had happened. Han Sen was not like any man she had seen. She let him start and he just immediately punched her, which was completely beyond her expectations. That's why she was not prepared for it. They were standing close to each other, so she was hit on the nose. In her understanding, in a showdown, the two opponents should go to the middle and take their positions. And men always acted as gentlemen in front of her. Even if they were weaker, they'd still want to show their masculinity. No one was like Han Sen, who threw a punch without a sign, hitting her face, where she wasn't even covered by protective gear. "I'm sorry, so sorry, have we not started?" Han Sen repeatedly apologized. He thought he'd let her beat him to let out the anger, and wanted it to end sooner. He didn't expect that he could hit her nose, which soon turned red. We had started, and will continue, bang. Qin Xian had more to say, but he acted hearing continue and hit her on the nose again. She was in so much pain she had to squat on the floor. You said continue, so I thought. Han Sen quickly explained. I'll kill you. Qin Xian jumped from the ground. Not caring about the rules anymore, she moved forward and started to beat Han Sen up. Resisting Qin Xian's beating, Han Sen found his fighting skills were much weaker than Qin Xian's, and he couldn't even play defense. He barely got through a dozen punches and was beaten down. Way less than 50. See you next time. Qin Xian turned away, leaving behind Han Sen, who was wounded all over. Han Sen stood up with a wry smile on his face. Wearing a combat suit, he wasn't injured seriously. It was just some pain he would have to put up with. The worst part was he seemed to have enraged Qin Xian even more. After Han Sen left the station to return home, Qin Xian took a shower and was about to delete the video and data of the fight right away. She was the station master and the strongest woman in Steel Armor Sanctuary. There was no way she'd let people see the video of herself being punched in the nose by Ass Freak. Before deletion, Qin Xian watched it again, and she was momentarily shocked. She thought that the reason she was hit was that Han Sen took advantage when she wasn't prepared. After carefully reviewing it several times, Qin Xian suddenly found that although this was a very important reason, it couldn't fully explain her being hit. Was it, thought Qin Xian, and repeatedly watched the part when he hit her and compared the data collected by the combat suit. So, his fist fighting skills are really poor, just about the normal level of a compulsory education graduate, but his movements were explosive and unexpected, Qin Xian mumbled as she was checking the data. And there was something about him, like a killer. Before he made a move, I could not predict his intention, and that had left me unguarded. When he threw a punch, there wasn't even the slightest change in his emotions, not even when he was hitting hard. The separation of behaviors and emotions should belong to a good assassin. A fatal blow under ordinary cover. No, he just graduated, and there is no way he is an assassin. Also, his movements were too bad for him to be one. So, this separation was just his innate talent. Qin Xian could only think of this one possibility. What she didn't know was that Han Sen was really poor when he entered God's sanctuary. At the time he offended both Qin Xian and Son of Heaven. No one dared to be with him, and no one dared to trade with him. The new graduate started to hunt creatures using an ordinary alloy dagger, without any experience. Even just ordinary creatures posed great threats to a beginner, not to mention that they often came in groups, so Han Sen must have taken an individual creature by surprise and killed it. Once surrounded by a group, he could only wait to die. To minimize the danger, he had to ambush and attack, and the most important part was not to alert the creatures, who had more acute senses than men. In the first month, Han Sen was honing the skills. In failure after failure, he learned to hide his emotions and intentions, so that the creatures sensed no danger even when he approached. It was like playing dirty, but it was also the only way for him to survive at that point. Later, he had to keep practicing and improve his skills in order to kill primitive creatures, and gradually they became part of his instinct. Although Han Sen's fighting skills were not even close to advanced, he was no worse than a great assassin in his explosiveness and timing. Like an assassin, his skills were also honed between life and death, and the only difference was that it was the creatures instead of men that he killed. Chapter 25, Ghost Haunt. He seems to have great strength, speed, and explosiveness, which indicates that he has fairly high geno points, unless he is practicing hyper-geno arts. Qin Xian looked at some data, but didn't worry too much about it. Han Sen's data was indeed better than average, but data like this can be seen anywhere in the shelter. It was only a bit unexpected that it belonged to Han Sr. Talented but vulgar and despicable. I'll just teach him a lesson next time, thought Qin Xian bitterly. Because of Han Sen's sneak attacks, she labeled him as despicable again. It was indeed hard for most people to imagine that Han Sen had integrated the sneak attack skills into his practice and instinct. The reason why Han Sen could hit Son of Heaven in the face was his sneak attack skills. Or else someone like him could never hit Son of Heaven, who had great Geno points and hyper Geno arts. Sneak attack didn't sound good, but it was practical. When he got home, Han Sen had dinner with his mother and Han Yan. The next day, he did not go to God's sanctuary but took the train to a martial hall. Han Sen had only learned basic martial arts in the past, and those were designed for people who had no Geno points. As one started to gain Geno points in God's sanctuary, one became stronger in general. With the practice of hyper Geno arts, the body had become even more unique, and this difference allowed people like him to practice certain martial arts that normal people could not practice. These martial arts can be learned at martial halls as well as at advanced colleges. And martial masters who worked at martial halls taught these for a living. Unlike in ancient times, these martial masters did not rely on their inherited fame, nor did they want to leave legacies. Their only goal was to make profit. So, the more money a student spent, the better martial arts were taught. Martial arts all had certain requirements for physical conditioning. If the requirements were not met, it wouldn't be possible to practice. In the past, Han Sen had no money and no significant enhancement in his physical conditioning. Now with 13 sacred Geno points and lots of other Geno points, he had become stronger. The practice of jade skin had also helped. Now his physical condition was among the best in his peer group. Ares Martial Hall was famous on Roka Planet. The tuition there was very expensive, but the martial arts taught were very good. The owner of the martial hall was a veteran and was famous back in the days when he was serving. After getting severely injured in a battle, he went back to Roka to open Ares Martial Hall. Everyone called the veteran Old Devil. As long as you paid enough, he would teach you anything, and you could indeed learn some really good skills. Young man, want to learn something? We have elementary classes, intermediate classes, advanced classes, and special classes here. You can learn fist fighting, weapon skills, and even hyper Geno arts here. For an elementary class, you could choose to learn a martial art that I define as elementary for $10,000. For an intermediate class, you could choose a martial art that I define as intermediate for $100,000. Advanced classes are each for $1 million, and special classes are each for 10 million. At these prices, I could guarantee a good learning outcome. Fellow, you look like you have a bright future ahead of you. Do you want to sign up for all special classes? All 12 martial arts for only 50 million. Old Devil looked at Han Sen with a greedy smile, like a dragon looking at gold. I would like to sign up for an advanced class to learn Ghost Haunt. Han Sen came here for a reason. His dad had learned from Old Devil and told him Old Devil has a great martial art called Ghost Haunt. Unfortunately, his dad's physical condition hadn't reached the required level for Ghost Haunt, so he couldn't learn it. He always had regretted that and asked Han Sen to learn Ghost Haunt when he grew up. Han Sen also heard from his father that Ghost Haunt was especially effective on women. Han Sen had once again offended Qin Xian, and it didn't look like she would let it go easily. Not willing to be bullied by her, he thought of his father's words about Old Devil and Ghost Haunt and wanted to take the opportunity. After all, $1 million was a piece of cake for him right now. Although Ghost Haunt is among the most advanced, its requirements were even higher than those of special classes. You must at least max out on mutant Geno points to stand a chance. How fit are you? Old Devil looked at Han Sen in surprise. No one had chosen Ghost Haunt in a while because of its high entry barrier. You can test me to see if I can meet the standards. Han Sen was not sure whether he would pass either. Technically, with 13 sacred Geno points he should be more fit than those who had maxed out on mutant Geno points. 10,000 test fee for a physical fitness test. Old Devil placed a card reader in front of Han Sr. Han Sen took out his credit card and paid 10,000, and Old Devil was quite pleased by his generosity. After scanning and testing in a dozen instruments, the test result was out, which slightly surprised Old Devil. Your physical fitness is very good. You must have almost maxed out on ordinary, primitive, and mutant geno points. Can I learn Ghost Haunt? Han Sen gave no reply, as his mutant geno points were less than 10, and sacred geno points and jade skin would explain his fitness. Yes. 1 million. Old Devil did not ask further, placing the card reader once again in front of Han Sr. While a bit upset about spending his hard-earned money, Han Sen paid for it. Young man, you have great things lined up for you. Come with me. You'll have to memorize Ghost Haunt first. Old Devil showed Han Sen into a screening room, turned on the hologram and left him alone in the room. It was Old Devil himself practicing Ghost Haunt in the hologram. Han Sen looked for a while, and his eyes widened. He thought to himself, wow, so that's what you mean by especially effective on women, Dad. Chapter 26, Mutant Three-Eyed Cat. Ghost Haunt should really be called Skin to Skin, as all movements were aimed at one thing, which was to stick on the opponent. Wrapping, blocking, and winding, all sorts of movements allowed the body to act like a snake to tightly trap the limbs of the opponent, so that there was no way for the opponent to attack. If the opponent was a woman, with the practice of Ghost Haunt, one would be able to feel her up. If it was a normal woman, she would feel overwhelmed in just a few movements. If I were to use Ghost Haunt to fight Qin Xian, she would consider me even more of a pervert. Han Sen suddenly regretted picking this martial art to learn. However, the tuition was non-refundable. Well, I'll just learn it first and see. Han Sen calmed down and started to carefully watch and memorize Ghost Haunt. With a closer look, Han Sen found that the martial art was not so nasty as it had seemed at first. There were indeed a lot of advanced skills, especially in wrestling and close combat. Many were very practical and could save a life at critical moments. It did indeed have high requirements for fitness, especially for flexibility. Even for those who had maxed out on mutant geno points, it would be somewhat difficult to meet the requirements. The reason Han Sen was able to pass, in addition to his sacred geno points, was jade skin training, which had greatly enhanced his flexibility. The teaching method of Old Devil was straightforward. You could learn the movements from his pre-recorded hologram, and then he would correct you where you made mistakes and remind you where you should be more careful. He could be reached via comlink, and his replies were detailed. Although he charged a lot, he was very engaged in teaching. With a strong body, Han Sen was able to start practicing Ghost Haunt in half a month. But only to get started was not enough. Martial arts that required close combat like this were the most dangerous. If not a master, one could be easily killed in the actual battle. Han Sen would never hunt creatures or fight with others in God's sanctuary using Ghost Haunt before he mastered it. Qin Xian, if you leave me alone, I'll let it go. If you insist on giving me a hard time, I will have to use you to practice Ghost Haunt, thought Han Sr. When he came to the teleport station, Han Sen still did not want to see Qin Xian. Looking around from time to time, he didn't see her until he entered God's sanctuary. In his room at Steel Armor Shelter, the primitive copper-toothed beast had become a mutant creature. Han Sen decided to let it keep evolving into a sacred blood creature. At the gate of the shelter, the gang of Son of Heaven was gone. It had been half a month since Han Sen left God's sanctuary, so Dollar was never spotted. They weren't very patient, so they just left. In fact, Son of Heaven had been aware that it was useless to guard the gate, as they didn't know what Dollar really looked like. So even if he did walk in front of them, they wouldn't be able to recognize him. Han Sen left the shelter and went into the mountains, ready to find a remote place to hunt. After entering the deep forests, human footprints became scarce. Han Sen summoned his armor when he was alone and went further into the mountains. Han Sen no longer bothered to hunt ordinary creatures. he would just chase them away or ignore them, and was only interested in hunting rare primitive creatures for food. Now Han Sen had maxed out on ordinary genopoints and had over 80 primitive genopoints, so he didn't really need commonly seen primitive creatures. Now what he really needed was mutant and sacred blood genopoints. Han Sen wanted to complete his evolution with all 4 types of genopoints maxed out. It would be really slow if he used only the black crystal to do this. For primitive creatures, I don't even need to do the hunting. The mutant beast soul I got from Qin Xian was a pet. It should be able to kill some primitive creatures if summoned. Han Sen looked at the beast soul in the shape of a black cat that he got from black male. Type of beast soul of mutant three-eyed cat, pet. Han Sen summoned the mutant three-eyed cat, and a little black kitty the size of his palm appeared. It was rubbing at the foot of Han Sen, looking just like a normal pet cat with its tiny body and wide eyes. Could such a little thing kill those creatures? Han Sen picked it up to take a look, not convinced that a cute thing like this possessed great strength. But then he thought, size didn't necessarily matter. Since it was a mutant beast soul, it must be able to hunt primitive creatures. Seeing some primitive triangular scaled beast wandering nearby, he ordered the cat, "Go kill the triangular scaled beast." The little guy meowed and got up its nerve to streak toward the triangular scaled beast, biting it on the tail. The triangular scaled beast hesitated and looked back at the cat. Throwing up its tail, the triangular scaled beast then whipped the cat away like a basketball. The mutant three-eyed cat screamed and ran behind Han Sen's feet, shivering. "She tricked me. No wonder she didn't even blink when she gave me this. It's a useless beast soul." Han Sen stared at the cat hidden behind him with widened eyes. Han Sen tried a few times more, and the cat was indeed of no use, not even able to beat the weakest primitive creature, a copper-toothed beast. Chased around and running, it was not like a mutant beast soul at all. Suddenly, Han Sen thought of the type of beast soul. According to his knowledge, the beast souls that can be summoned to fight on their own were normally either fighters or mounts, while he knew nothing about pet beast souls. Chapter 27, SOS. What the heck is a pet beast soul? It's not just for fun, right? I was really tricked by Qin Xian. What am I going to do with it? Han Sen's heart sank, and he killed the copper-toothed beast that was chasing the cat. When he was about to take the cat back, it started to meow around the body of the copper-toothed beast with its mouth watering. "Go ahead." Han Sen looked at the mutant three-eyed cat curiously. Normal fighter beast souls and mount beast souls didn't have to eat, and they could just recover in a vacuum once injured. Receiving the approval from Han Sen, the cat rushed to the corpse and started gnawing, but it was clear that its teeth and claws were not sharp enough to break down the skin. Depressed, Han Sen peeled the skin off, sliced the meat with a dagger and fed it to the cat. And this little thing sure could eat. The copper-toothed beast was at least twice its size and it managed to eat all the flesh. Lying on the ground with a full belly, the cat could barely move and Han Sen was almost worried about it. Helplessly shaking his head, Han Sen took the cat back and decided to research the use of a pet beast soul on Skynet when he got back home. Mutant creatures were not so easy to find. Han Sen had been in the mountains for more than half a month, and did not encounter any mutant creatures. He did find quite a few primitive creatures new to him and now had more than 90 primitive geno points. Hunting alone in the mountains was quite boring, so Han Sen would summon the cat to play with and feed for fun when he was resting. The protection from the black beetle armor allowed him to practice ghost hunt even when hunting primitive creatures. Although he was still not skilled at it, he noticed the strengths of this martial art, especially in wrestling. It was very easy to use, and would incapacitate the creatures in a short time. However, close combat can be dangerous, and there were a few times when he used the wrong movement and could have been killed by the creatures. For over a month in the mountains, he had not found a single mutant creature, while he made a lot of progress in using ghost hunt. Later, Han Sen no longer needed to rely on his armor when hunting primitive creatures. One of his biggest gains was that he finally maxed out on primitive geno points. Thinking of the fact that he was struggling for ordinary geno points just a few months ago, he was suddenly in a great mood and started to make a fire and barbecue some meat. Help! Help! Han Sen was sharing the barbecue with the mutant three-eyed cat he named Meowth when he saw a guy in ragged clothes running toward him, crying for help. He quickly got up and looked over there. With just one look, Han Sen abandoned the meat on the ground, took back Meowth and started to run. "Buddy, please help me. I'll give you money, however much you want," cried the man while running. "You can keep your money." Han Sen did not turn his head and ran desperately. You first needed to be alive to spend money, and there were at least 100 Momo beasts chasing him. Although Momo beasts were only primitive creatures, they each weighed more than a dozen tons and had the toughest skin. If hit or trampled by one, his internal organs would probably be shattered even with his armor on, not to mention there were so many of them. Even if Qin Xian, Son of Heaven and Fist Guy were all here, they'd have run under such circumstances. "Buddy, not so fast. Give me a hand and I will thank you." Behind Han Sen, the man was out of breath. "I'm in danger as well. Just pray." After running for a while, Han Sen saw a cliff ahead of him with green vines hanging, grabbed a vine and started climbing up. The benefits of the gained geno points and practice of ghost hunt were showing. Han Sen was in the air with just a bit of climbing and jumped on a large stone platform extending from the cliff. Seeing Han Sen climbing up, the man also ran over and wanted to follow him. The man was either too weak or too tired, so he slipped down after a few tries. "Buddy, help." With the Momo beast less than 30 feet from him, the man was about to cry out. "Hang on." Han Sen grabbed the vine the man was holding onto and started pulling hard. Overjoyed, the man climbed with all fours, leveraging Han Sen's strength. When he was 30 feet from the ground, he heard Momo beasts running into the cliff. Han Sen and the man felt as if even the mountains were trembling. With pulling and climbing, the man was finally on the platform. Once on the platform, the man lied down as if he were paralyzed, while breathing heavily, unable to speak. "Friend, what on earth did you do to them?" Han Sen looked down at the Momo beasts running into one another. They wouldn't even leave after they got up, roaring at the platform. But they couldn't climb up as they were even bulkier than elephants. "Do not mention it. Worst luck ever." The man calmed down, fished out a packet of cigarettes from his pocket, lit one and offered one to Han Sen. "You saved my life and I, Lin Baifeng, will always remember. I will show my gratitude after returning to the shelter. Best with cash." Han Sen looked at the cigarette and knew the man must be rich. A packet of Schwarzwald cigarettes cost more than 10,000, and there was no need to be modest with such a wealthy guy. Chapter 28, Expensive Food. "Buddy, what's your name?" Lin Baifeng threw a lighter at Han Sr. Han Sen caught the lighter and lit the cigarette. Made from the tobacco produced from Schwarzwald, the cigarettes were harmless to the body and especially refreshing. For those who were risking their lives in God's sanctuary, the Schwarzwald cigarettes were definitely heaven sent. "Sen, trust me, when we are back at the shelter, you can have as much money as you want. Problems that can be solved by money are no problems for me." They chatted for a while, and Han Sen understood what had happened. Lin Baifeng was not only rich, but super rich. He was also lucky to be assigned to a shelter where he had very close acquaintances. So he bought a whole lot of mutant beast souls, armor, weapons, mounts, fighters, etc. He also hired a group of people to hunt with him, wanting to hunt a sacred blood creature. With his great luck, they indeed caught a sacred blood creature, but what happened after was not so lucky. The people he hired either died or escaped, and he just went running into the mountains. After all sorts of danger, he had managed to survive, but lost almost all the beast souls he bought. If it was not for Han Sen, he would have been killed by the Momo beasts. Sen, how far is our glory shelter from here? Asked Lin Baifeng. It's your glory shelter. Han Sen laughed. Lin Baifeng was shocked. Sen, are you joking? I came from steel armor shelter, and it takes 2 weeks to return there. #*T. I'm really in the range of another shelter. Lin Baifeng was very depressed. He had friends in Glory Shelter, and it was easy for him to buy flesh and beast souls. But it was likely that no one knew him at a different shelter, so even with money it would be hard to buy advanced flesh and beast souls. Hey, what did you do to the Momo beasts? They are being so persistent. Han Sen looked down again and the Momo beasts were still there, roaring and standing on their hind legs, trying to climb onto the stone platform. I was walking and got hungry. So I saw a young Momo beast grazing, and said Lin Baifeng bitterly. It was unfortunate. It seems that we are trapped here for some time, so before they leave, let's be nice to each other. Han Sen laughed. Right, let's do that. Lin Baifeng smiled agreeably and approached Han Sen. Sen, I'm so thirsty. Can I drink from your water bag? 10,000 per cup, Han Sen said, narrowing his eyes. #*T. What happened to being nice? Cried Lin Baifeng. You are paying, I'm selling. Isn't that nice? But your water is too expensive. It is even more expensive than water from planet Snow Spring. And 10,000 can buy a few bottles of that. It can't be water from planet Snow Spring that you have. Lin Baifeng glanced at Han Sen's water bag and said. Although this is only water from a pool, we do not know how long we'll be trapped here. Water is life at this point, and we'll die within a week without water. And you think it's not worth it? Han Sen smiled. It's worth it, but my wallet was lost on the way. Could you give it to me on credit and I'll pay you double when we arrive at the shelter? Lin Baifeng said. We don't know each other, and you still owe me the life-saving fee. And now you want to get water on credit. You are making this so hard for me. Han Sen looked indecisive. Triple, no. Quadruple. Deal. Han Sen took out his own cup and poured Lin Baifeng a cup of water. Lin Baifeng drank the water in a gulp and gave the empty cup back 3 times for more water. That's it for today. I don't have much water and need to save. We still don't know when the Momo beasts will leave. Han Sen put the water bag away when Lin Baifeng asked the 4th time. Sen, you are so strong, so brave, and so impressive that you are able to hunt alone deep in the mountains. What do you want? Han Sen rolled his eyes. Lin Baifeng approached Han Sen and said, Sen, my beast soul was completely destroyed on the way here. Now I feel so insecure with no beast soul on me. Do you have extra beast souls to sell? Speaking of beast souls, Han Sen had killed quite a few primitive beasts in recent days and had gained no beast soul. He might have used up his luck on the 2 sacred blood beast souls he got. No beast soul. Would you like some primitive meat jerky? Yes, of course. 10,000 per piece. Sen, this is such a small piece. Trapped on the stone platform for 8 days, they still didn't feel like the Momo beasts would ever leave. We cannot wait any longer. We must find a way out, Han Sen told Lin Baifeng solemnly. We still have some food and water. Let's wait. And maybe the herd is about to retreat. Lin Baifeng had a lingering fear about the Momo beasts. We still have water and food, as well as physical strength. When we have used up everything, we would stand no chance, Han Sen said. But how is it even possible with such a herd? Lin Baifeng said bitterly. So we will have to climb up. Han Sen pointed to the cliff above. Lin Baifeng looked at the cliff standing straight into the clouds and suddenly shuddered. Are we capable of doing this? We have to. It beats waiting to die, and we don't have to climb over. If we could climb up a bit and find somewhere to stand, We could just walk around and go down on the other side of the cliff, Han Sen said.
Sen, I agree, Lin Baifeng quickly said.
Great. We will start to climb now using the vines. Han Sen grabbed a vine, made sure it was tough enough and began climbing. Chapter 29, Stormbird.
Sen, you are so fit. You must have maxed out on mutant geno points.
Lin Baifeng stopped climbing as he felt his arms hurting too much, while Han Sen was still climbing briskly.
Hang in there. There is a rock sticking out up there, and we can go there and rest.
Han Sen looked down at Lin Baifeng.
Sen, I can't.
Shall we just go back down?
You stay here. I will go up first and then pull you up with the vine.
Han Sen started to climb with all fours, and he was so fast it looked like he was walking on the ground, which stunned Lin Baifeng. It took a little while for Han Sen to reach the rock and use the vine to pull Lin Baifeng up. The rock was the size of a table. The two huddled on the rock and looked around. The cliff was so steep and there was no way to climb if it wasn't for the vines, which only covered a part of the cliff.
Sen, let's stay here for 2 days and maybe the Momo beasts will leave if they don't see us.
The cliff is so steep and I'm not as fit as you.
I really can't go up, Lin Baifeng said anxiously.
Well, you just rest here, and I'll go see if there is a way out. If there is, I'll come back for you. If not, then we could just wait for the Momo beasts to leave, Han Sen said and got up to climb.
Sen, you will not abandon me.
Lin Baifeng grabbed Han Sen's clothes like a little girl.
Don't worry.
How can I abandon you when you owe me so much money? Han Sen patted Lin Baifeng on the shoulder and climbed away. Because he had practiced ghost haunt, Han Sen was particularly good at climbing. As he was much stronger now, it wasn't too hard for him either. Han Sen climbed for a few hundred feet and still saw nothing but the cliff. The vines continued to go up, and he was wondering where their roots were. Han Sen felt a little tired and was thinking about going down. But with another look, he felt like there was a rock sticking out above him. I'll climb up to the rock above and have a look. If there is no way out, I'll just go down to eat and drink. Maybe we could outrun the Momo beasts, Han Sen decided, and kept climbing. The stone was farther and larger than Han Sen had imagined. It was half the size of a basketball court. When he got on the stone, Han Sen's eyes suddenly widened. On the stone was a nest made with tree limbs and vines. It looked like a huge swallow's nest, almost taking up a better half of the stone. An egg at least 3 feet tall lay in the nest. Wow, such a big egg. How big would the creature that laid it be? Han Sen shuddered. The creature was not here now, but he dared not think what would happen if it came back. Being big did not necessarily means it was advanced. Momo beasts were huge but merely primitive creatures. However, the ability to make a nest and lay an egg on the cliff proved the creature was no average creature. It could very likely be a sacred blood creature. If the egg belonged to a sacred blood creature, Han Sen would not want to miss it. After some hesitation, Han Sen approached the egg and cut a hole in the eggshell with the tip of his dagger. Fishing out a straw from his pocket, he stuck it in the hole and started sucking. Suddenly the sweet juice filled Han Sen's mouth. Sacred blood creature Stormbird's egg eaten. No sacred geno point gained. Although no sacred blood geno point was gained, the fact that the egg was indeed a sacred blood creature left Han Sen in joy. It was such a huge egg, with at most only 10 sacred geno points, that he was not surprised that he hadn't gained a point with just a mouthful. And he already had some sacred geno points and couldn't have all 10 points, so he could only get 6 or 7 if he was lucky. But sacred geno points were so hard to get that even just a few more would help. Han Sen was desperately sucking the liquid with the straw that he used to drink from his water bag when he was hiding from the creatures that he didn't have to move. It was unexpectedly handy as well for sucking the egg juice. The egg was so big that when Han Sen finally heard the cue that he was gaining 1 sacred geno point, he was so full that he could drink no more. Han Sen pulled out the straw, and then sealed the hole with mud. Putting the straw back, he descended using the vine. Sen, what took you so long? Is there a way out? Seeing Han Sen coming from above, Lin Baifeng, who had been worried sick, asked immediately in a low voice so as not to alert the Momo beasts below. No. It is as steep as a mirror, and we have nowhere to go. Han Sen shook his head. Then we have no option but to wait for the herd to leave, Lin Baifeng said disappointedly. It's all right. We still have some food and water left. Han Sen was really taking his time now as he couldn't finish drinking the raw egg any time soon, and he wouldn't leave before that. They huddled on the stone to spend the night, and the next morning Han Sen climbed up to eat more egg. He made sure there was no creature in the nest before he went up and broke the seal to drink from the egg. Sen, why are you climbing up again? Lin Baifeng wondered when Han Sen came down. There are sacred blood creatures above, and I was having a feast up there. Do you want to go together? Han Sen laughed. You can keep it? Lin Baifeng glanced at him and didn't believe a word he said. Even if there really were sacred blood creatures, Han Sen was more likely to be their food. Volume I, Part 2 ends here. If you enjoyed it, please give us a like and subscribe so we can be motivated to make even better videos in the future.